Welcome to On the Block. I'm Agnieszka from Espeo Software, and if you are building in Web3 or investing in it, this episode is for you, because security is where projects survive or fail. Today, I'm joined by Carlos, founder and smart contract security expert at Zealynx. You may also know him by his nickname as BLOQARL. So, Carlos, great to have you with us.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me. Excited to be with you.
Awesome. So, we want to pick your brain about a bit of a few things. So let's start by diving into the foundation of smart contract security, because that's not so obvious how it works. So can you walk us through your process for how a comprehensive smart contract audit works?
The first thing that comes to my mind is that it has changed over the last 2, 3, 4 years, but generally there are different type of approaches and there are different things that work for everyone, and then at some point started to come AI, but I guess we'll get to that later. But generally my process is that I need to read everything that is in the code. I need to understand, or first of all, I need to understand what it is that I'm reviewing. What is it that the protocol is about? What are the main features, invariants, and what is meant to happen? And then you just play with that in the sense of you have possibly some documentation as well, and you need to, by understanding what is meant to do and by checking the code, you need to make sure that it's actually happening and doing what it's supposed to do. And then just by reading every single line, you get to see small logic issues, like as simple as in a condition not having the equal or major and equal, and one of those things it's by missing or it's not supposed to be there, and then that makes a big deal, a big problem. As simple things as that, and that's why you really need to read everything. And then some other ways popular are so-called following the money. Basically, you try to follow a end-to-end scenario in a way. Like you check the external functions. So that's the ones that the users or potential malicious user is supposed to use, and see what they can do with that, how they can break something, if there's something missing there, if there's anything they manage to do or a place they get to reach that they're not meant to. And that's how you discover some access control missing or some input validations and things like that. And of course, now with AI, you get to have this partner in crime to help you with analyzing everything and to make sure you miss as little things as possible. And that's more or less a kind of summary.
Okay, so mostly you look at the smart contract code like a line by a line, and then we'll try to look how it works, what are the consequences of each step. Did I get it right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Do you also have meetings do you only look at the code and the documentation, or do you also meet with the people that provide the code, the coders, maybe the product owner, and so on, to get the business perspective? How does it work?
That's a good question, because there is a kind of preparation or previous work for the audit. And yes, when I first contact them, of course, we have a meeting and they tell me about the protocol, what they want to do, what they've been aiming for, and that then I get to know more of the whole context. I like to gain as much context as possible, and then before the audit starts, I have a questionnaire, like a form with different questions that are meant for understanding even more about the process. I need to understand. There are questions like, what part of the code has changed the most? in the development phase? Or what vulnerabilities have you identified yourself and tried or fixed yourself? And well, if you have done fuzzing, or if you're planning to, or different type of questions. And again, everything is to gain more and more context. However, there's something I'm also suggesting new clients that it's, and to repeat again, is to gain even more context, because my suggestion is that I can be part of their development process, because sometimes they reach out to me and they are not ready for the audit, but they are already checking who to choose, who to trust. And what I'm offering is that they look, include in the loop early. For me, if you give me some updates, if we meet, or if you just write to me, what's the stage, what are you having problems with, or you can even ask questions. Like, I don't do that for charging them early. It's just I think, and I know it's better to be involved early. Ideally, that involvement would be already reviewing the pull requests that are being pushed, checking early the security of the code, being involved in the whole process. But if that's not something they agree to or make a decision for, then it's good. Like, and I have, for the last month or so, we've had a client that we're doing that, and he's just giving me some updates, or they are giving me some updates as they go. And yes, I mean, answering your question, is definitely not only about reading the code, but I mean, you need to catch up with the knowledge of the project to some people that have been working with it or thinking about it for months. So you cannot just pretend that you will manage that in 1 week, 3 days, or 2 weeks.
I get it. And well, I would say that actually putting a security in the process earlier could be cheaper, because you are actually building it right. Yeah. You don't need then to rebuild it. And you mentioned a very, interesting word. There is a lot of talk about fuzzing. I know there is for sure some fuzzing by a few people, but let's focus on fuzzing. Can you tell us what is this exactly, and how does it, fit into the security?
For context, I started as Zealynx. We started back in 2024 offering mainly as a service fuzzing and formal verification, because it was a way to get into the niche inside the niche and try to get clients starting there. And I remember adding some kind of or thinking of a way to explain this properly, and I think it was something like, imagine hiring or having 1,000 QAs, 1,000 testers, trying to randomly go or select or write code and trying to add different inputs, instead of you have a, I don't know, deposit function, and instead of, okay, then I need to add 20 or 100. But what if you add asterisk and $sign? What happens? Or things like that. It's trying to not necessarily do what it's supposed to do, but fuzzing is adding randomized selection of characters or numbers or different things, or whatever it's allowed in the input of the function, if it's for numbers or whatever, depending on what it accepts.
Okay, yeah, I get it. So I believe there is this anecdote, in the IT world, that there is a bar and there are testers testing the bar. So the first one is asking for 1 beer, another is asking for -1 beer. There's another one asking for 100 beers, etc., etc. So everything quality is checked, and then the bar goes live, and there is the first customers who asks, "Excuse me, where is the toilet?" And then, entire bar goes on fire. So it's this kind of situation to be prepared for something that, maybe shouldn't be there, but you cannot be sure that no one will put there this kind of information. Yeah, for the malicious reasons, or just trying to mess up with the process.
Yeah, for me it was easy to understand this process, this fuzzing, because even if I didn't know this before starting with Web3, I have a background of 10 years as a QA, so I was 10 years trying to break things anyways. I was mainly those years working on mobile apps, and yes, you just need to not follow what is supposed to be followed, to try to add different things, try to do different unexpected, try to break it. And that's what you do with fuzzing.
Okay, so you actually answered my next question, because I wanted to ask you if it's only something that you do with smart contracts and chain code, but just as you mentioned, it's as important in Web2 for mobile or web apps. Did I get it right?
Yes. Like, to be fair, that's as I say, I didn't know the word fuzzing, and I was already manually doing that, let's say. Obviously, fuzzing is something you can automate. Now, I'm not sure how, but probably there are different ways of do fuzzing in Web2. But yeah, of course, this is applicable in Web2 as well.
Awesome. And let's move towards your experience. So what are the most common smart contract vulnerabilities that you've seen in your audits? Of course, anything without disclosing the information, but just your perspective. What's the typical security issues?
Interesting, because it's not about complex things. I would not say some words or something you don't understand. It's mainly access control, like who's supposed to be able to run this or to do that. And as I said earlier, and that's why fuzzing is important, the input validation. So that's another thing. I would say, while those are common, the thing that you need to focus, maybe not the most, but to be sure that there will be issues, is logic issues, basically. Like in an audit, you're not just focusing on the security vulnerabilities, but you're, as I said earlier, you're trying to see that the protocol is doing what it's meant to be done. So that's where you find logic issues. If you have docs that say do this, or if the dev told you that it's supposed to do that and it's not doing it, then you raise it, you mention it. And another thing is common to find is ways to, and these are usually high and critical issues, are ways to break the whole system to DOS it, like denial of service. And yeah, those are probably the ones I find the most. And yeah.
Okay, yeah. So some of them sound like, actually understanding the logic, and if there are any issues there, sounds like quite complex. But when you mention some fundamentals like access, who can run the code, that actually is something that it's, I would say, pretty easy to handle when you know how to handle it. Is that what you would agree with?
Yes, and actually to add another one that it's needed, not worth it, it's needed to be mentioned. You would not believe how many people just write the private keys in plain text.
Okay. Sounds terrifying.
I don't know how many times I've seen that. And then they tell you, yes, we know about it. Or this a testing account or deployment or whatever. But from there to disaster, months or years later, there's not much.
Okay, so yeah, that one is terrifying, and actually it's good to have you to point this kind of issues out. And can you share something that was most unexpected or more surprising vulnerability that you encountered?
Well, I would say a vulnerability is surprising when it really breaks everything. Like I've had few months back some audit that I found different ways that it was a game, that the game would just never work again. And then all the money inside it would just be locked. And then you think, my God, I mean, how could that they went for the audit? I mean, it's not I'm God knows a master or anything, but it's good I found it, and it's good that that I reviewed it, and that way, see, it's at the end it's not expensive to go for an audit because it can just be much worse.
Exactly.
So
just like
that's why it's surprising. It's like, oh my God, good that I found it, and it's also a relief that when you find those, like, I'm happy I found this.
Yeah, definitely. And well, that was money well invested from the company side. Just like I said, security is sometimes all about project being able to, live and be successful or fail. Yeah. The case that you mentioned would totally destroy the project and probably be quite a lawsuits for the code owner, for the product owners and the company. Okay, but we are talking about smart contracts that are on a public network. That means that, well, everyone can try to use them, everyone can try to run them, everyone can read them. But you mentioned also the traditional Web2 development. We have, for example, traditional banking applications. There you cannot view the code so easily. Is it also important to have audits, security audits for this kind of apps? I think it is, but I would like to pick your brain on that.
Probably something I do with the clients, or I started realizing long ago, is that you cannot just propose them to do a smart contract audit so that they are secure, so they are safe, so they are good to go. That's not right from my point of view. And it's not right because that's not the only way they can be hacked, or they can have problems in general. So that's why we started to propose and offer also pen testing and TypeScript audits. So basically the reviews of the Web2 part, it's very relevant. And sometimes the client doesn't want you to do them, to check the code, because it's not, as for banks, maybe it's not possible to share it publicly, but then you do some black box pen testing, as we did recently, and then things come up also. And those are very, very important things for anyone, like depending on what type of project or protocol you have, and the possibilities whatever you want to do. If you want to share everything with the auditor so that they can check everything, then that's the best. If you can't or don't want to, then reach some extent of it.
Okay, and you mentioned black box pen testing. Could you tell more about it, how it works, what are pros, cons?
We actually, was a couple of weeks ago, we had a client that asked us for that, and they share the front end URL and the API URLs and backend, and then there are certain type of checks that you do on your site following some checklists that exist, OWASP ones, and then you go through that. You try to make sure that different type of hacks, different type of ways of breaking the site are not possible, and if they are, like, you're trying to act like the attacker, and then you raise those things. That's mainly how it works.
Okay, so then you actually do not see the code itself, but still you are good at breaking it. Yeah.
You are able to do that through the browser.
And well, let's get back for a moment to Web3. and the security there, because I've heard a common belief that if you want to write a secure smart contract or on EVM, so Ethereum virtual machine, and so it will be very costly because you will have higher gas usage. Is that something that you would agree with?
No, of course, because it's not necessarily like that. It depends how you, as I mentioned earlier, having secure it might be just changing a line on your code that there is an error. Security doesn't mean increasing gas costs. Sometimes adding a few more checks. Is it really more expensive? It's not more expensive. More gas, yeah, but it's not more expensive overall, because if you get hacked, then no. Then when you suggest a fix to an issue to clients, you understand that, okay, let's not ask them to rework everything or let's try to keep it simple. But it's not necessarily connected. It's not applicable. I'd say that writing secure code, it's expensive.
Okay, yeah. So it's not about adding layers and layers of codes to make it more secure. It's rather about the checks and the adjustments in the code that's already there, or adding additional checks. But it's not about building a separate logic in that by adding more code. Yeah.
Sometimes it might be even cheaper because you use, for instance, Open Zeppelin libraries that are already optimized and are safe, instead of some protocols that they want to reinvent the wheel and do their own their own code for ERC20s or for different things I've seen there. And it's like, but why don't you? Or I've seen someone trying to do their own multisig, and like, why don't you use Gnosis for that? So yeah, there are. It's definitely, it's not only that it can be more expensive, it actually can be cheaper if you use the right things.
Okay, yes, I get it. So we could say that it's not only about that security code will be, executing secure chain code will be more expensive. It can be cheaper because, without the consequences, you can get the better quality code on already proven libraries. That's awesome. And I focused on a lot on your audit services and what you provide, but you are sharing the knowledge and your expertise today with us. And also you are very active in the community as BLOQARL, as I mentioned before. So can you tell us more about your publications and educational content? And of course, why do you give this knowledge for free? How does it work?
I think we would need to go back to when I started in Web3 security, and there are multiple reasons why I started doing that. Let me structure it. So first of all, when I discovered blockchain, I fell deeply in love and involved with it, and I really got excited. But at the same time, it was very abstract. I was never before related to crypto, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily the thing that it's abstract. It's blockchain itself, because you start reading about what it is or what it is, Ethereum, how it works, and then you don't want to bring that home, let's say, and start talking about it too much, because anyways you're going to talk about it. So I decided that I will create a Twitter account specific for that. And I was starting to write about what I was learning, because I had to write notes somewhere. So I say, I'll just write it publicly. I found that there were some nice people in the Web3 community already. And I thought that I'm going to write these notes for myself, this post, and so that I can come back to them. It's not about getting visibility. I never thought I could reach some certain amount of followers. And then once you start learning more complex things, then I started to write articles, like with walkthroughs, Uniswap, V2, or Aave, or different protocols. And I was genuinely doing that for myself. It's just those were useful for others, for other people, because what you need to think is that it doesn't matter how noob you are, how early or how basic things you're learning, there's always going to be someone a step behind you for whom those things are going to be useful. So, yeah, I was sharing what they say is learning publicly. And yeah, at some point I also went on YouTube and created a channel for that to explain also, more visually, let's say, with the videos, everything that I was learning, and that was the whole idea. And it was one of the best things I could do, if not the best, because that helps building your own brand, your personal brand, and that gets you. I mean, if you provide value, it's like what goes around comes around. It pays off, and then you have good connections because people know you, or you just help someone, they write to you to say thank you, or they just know people know that you write this type of articles or that, and then I was hired to write articles for other people. Again, that makes you connect with even more, and then it's at some point that you go with the t-shirt to a conference and someone says, hey, I watched your videos, or I follow you on Twitter. And that's also nice. I mean, it's curious, because when I was more focused on YouTube and I saw 300 views or 400, it's like, nah, that sucks. But then if you realize that those are actually 400 people, then maybe, I mean, it's something, right? So yeah, and then you see the value you're providing and you want to continue with that. And not only that, when I'm mentoring other people, what I propose always is to start by learning publicly. Just share what you're learning. Share, if you find a nice article, post about it. Just say, hey, look what I read. It always works for other people.
Okay, that's really awesome work. And with the, general complaints about security being something hard, or crypto world being something when unavailable. So thank you on behalf of the community for your knowledge. Your videos are actually very complex, very step-by-step procedures, and well, many people appreciates it. So thank you very much for that part of your path and of your educational purpose. And well, we've covered the fundamentals. Now let's zoom out a bit and look for more industry level differences, or we will look into the past and into the future of testing. So let me give you two comparisons and just give me a few quick thoughts that are in your brain about those. Let's start with the first pair. It will be Web 2 testing or Web 3 testing.
Oh, with Web 2 testing comes to me what I did for 10 years, this QA world. So probably it's not either or, it's both, because if you are covering the testing of your smart contracts as well through testing, and you make sure that the backend, let's say, it's working fine, but you have and pardon my French, shitty UI, who will use it? No one will use it.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. That when we are talking about, blockchain projects, it's not only about the smart contract and chain code. Yes, there are also another layers, like, just like you said, UI that also can be, either good or bad, or someone in between. And let's try another comparison. Testing chain code on Solana or on Ethereum?
Solana, it's, I want to say, is much more complex it's much more complex to test things in Solana than in Ethereum. I've in the past been developing also in Solana, and a year and a half ago or something like that, with Anchor, it was a huge mess, and there was no one that could help with that. There were things that were not possible in testing, or that you need to look for different tools, even for as simple as trying to move. If you wanted to test some staking, you need to run the test that you stake and then go in the future and a certain amount of, time or blocks, and then do unstake. So that simple thing, I mean, I'm not sure as of today, but a year ago, it was insanely complex. And I know I've checked we were like banging our head against the wall for long, and it's super complicated, and it's not as easy as with Foundry in Ethereum.
Your personal preference would be Ethereum, at least from your experience, yeah?
Absolutely.
Okay. And if we talk about the clients and clients' needs, have they changed over the last couple of years? Would you say that clients are more security aware today?
I think so. The Web2 securities, right? Like the services like pen testing, TypeScript audits. Definitely, I'm seeing more and more protocols that want like both audits at the same time. Recently, we did a Solana plus TypeScript audit together. And I mean, if you go 2 years back, there were not that many resources for security as there are now. Like when I started in 2022, you can't compare to now. So if there are more resources available, then it's easier to write safer. And what it was raised back then in public contest, nowadays it's something that it's by default, that it's obvious and that it's safely done.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that resources being put into security is actually the result of all the education and general awareness, probably also some very huge public security fails, yeah, that makes people put money in front, not after something bad really happens.
For sure, yeah.
How about the future? So what do you think will be the future of chain code security? Let's for now put aside the AI. I will ask about it, but aside from AI, there are different new technologies or new sets. We are talking about security, anonymity. What do you think will impact the future security reviews the most?
I think Solidity still needs to grow as a language. We're in a very still early, like still 0.9 or 8. I mean, I don't know if I saw something, but anyways, Solidity is a basic language and it needs to evolve. So probably in years, again, it's going to change, and it will affect how smart contracts are built and secured, and so on. And what else? So there's clearly some changes on the public contest world, let's say, and bug bounties. It is, maybe less popular or not less popular, but there are lately less contests there, and that, like, it's part of the process of security at the end. So I'm not sure exactly how's that going to be in 1 or 2 years from now, but a new model might come up and will help with security. Also, we will get to AI, but there will be different possibilities thanks to AI in the sense of brainstorming ideas, possibilities, building platforms and things. So not necessarily using AI for security, but for ideas. But yeah, it's a bit uncertain how much or how it's going to grow. Depends on on Web3 community and tools evolving as we as we learn things, as we get hacked, and as we grow.
Yeah, as things are evolving, as we get hacked, that should be the motto of this interview. And let's move towards the AI. You already mentioned a bit of it, that it can support auditors, but I believe it also empowers cyber criminals. And there's the let's call it the third side of that people are starting vibe coding. So actually creating code without being sure, what it is. And if they see in a UI it's working, they think it's okay. So I think that there are like three elements of AI. And if you could elaborate on that, who does it actually help?
It helps everyone. I mean, as much as I can use it to help me understand better the code so that I can find issues to raise for the protocol to fix. An attacker, someone that wants to do some bad, they can use it in the same way. And the same way as there are tools being used to detect those automatically, those things for AI agents. Well, the problem is that hackers have maybe much more time to focus on one specific thing and make it work and make like mail agents or I don't know, different things and focus on that, build on that. And at the same time, yes, the developers, of course, you want to build faster, you can build faster, and who's not going to use it if you can do that, right? It's obvious to use it nowadays, but you need to understand how to use it, not just creating code. Actually, yesterday, I wrote a post about this specific thing because I'm not sure that, I'm sure it's not going to, AI is not going to replace smart contract devs now because it's easier to use it and be safer if you just use AI to develop a front end, something simple or maybe not simple, but that is not handling or managing any money. And with smart contracts, you're usually involving, it's more of a financial institution or something, you're involving more delicate things. And for that, you're always going to need a person. You're always going to need someone. So everyone is going to use it. And the thing is, like with everything, you as security researcher need to grow at least as much as the hackers do.
Exactly. Looks like, generally, hackers will definitely use it. So, the business and the security needs to get even better in that. So it's not about avoiding AI; it's about using it in a smart way. And just like you said, understanding when it isn't ready yet, and human should be probably always human needs to be somewhere in the loop. And the last question I would like to ask is more about finding talent. It's what you do. It's quite a niche field and requires, I believe, a set of different skills and capabilities. It's a bit of being a detective, being maybe also trying to break things, just like you said. Where do you find people to work with, and how do you verify the skills and knowledge for cyber security teams?
I started beginning of 2024, bringing, I call them interns, but it was more of a mentorship kind of agreement.
Okay.
And I did that because I started doing that. Currently there are in Zealynx, if I'm not mistaken, 8 interns now. And the reasons I started to do that is because, as I said earlier, when I started in learning about blockchain and Web3 security, I found it as much interesting as complicated. And all that was in my mind alone. And I didn't have anyone to speak with about it in person. and obviously you still don't know or have connections on Twitter or anywhere. So I would have killed to have someone offering me a kind of mentorship. Just someone to talk to ask questions, to see how they're handling their everyday, to be connected in some way, to have some opportunities, to see how the private audit is handled, the talks with the clients, anything like that. So the first one that I took is because it was someone that I know here in Wrocław, where I live. And I started with him, but then I realized that people continuously kept asking me to work for free for me, whatever. And I say, okay, maybe I can give some more opportunities, and maybe let's see, maybe also they can help me with simple things for the company, even writing a report or something. So there's some interest on their side. And what I do with the mentees is more of how do you know they are good or they're growing? I always explain to them that the best thing we can do to know each other and to see how much you're progressing is to have daily updates or weekly updates, so that I understand what they are doing, and at the same time that allows for me keeping them accountable and me being able to suggest what direction to take, or don't go that way or don't do that, and maybe them using it to ask questions about anything, not necessarily only about the code, but about writing an article or not, or making a YouTube channel or not, or I mean, I've almost tried everything to build your personal brand. And sometimes just having someone there to whom you can talk, it's a lot. So then the time passed, and actually last month, December, I hired full-time one of the interns because he's shown interest. He's shown that he cares for Zealynx, and he was able to propose like full-time value, let's say. Like he was able to help with something, and then we agreed that he will join and he will help me with that. And then, if the other ones that they want to continue auditing, they participate in private audits and they show multiple times that they are able to help me to provide value when the time comes and there is the need for them to help, then for me it's easier to go with those that I know and hire them than asking around or knowing someone from Twitter and asking him to help me or to handle it. So that's why I do this. That's how I find talent. And if someone gets tired or doesn't want to do that, then that's it. That's a filter, right?
Well, that's quite unique approach, but like you said, I think it's very beneficial for you getting the best people that follow the standards that you have in your company, but also for people to actually become a part of this kind of action. So that's amazing. And let's move on to wrapping up and closing. So thank you very much for the conversation and sharing a lot of knowledge. But there is one more thing I would like to ask you. If our viewers were to remember just one Web3 security rule, what would it be?
Bring security early to your project.
Well, it can lower the costs, not make it bigger. So that's a great point. Perfect reminder that security, it's not the checkbox at the end. It's a habit from the start. So thanks everyone for being here all with us, and feel free to leave your questions and suggestions just below the video. And of course, we will link your blog article that you mentioned. So thank you very much once more, Carlos. And remember, stay on the blog to stay ahead.